and welcome to this edition of Trader Talk TV. Today we're talking about trading across the fragmented ecosystem. As you know, we are in the privacy first era. Things have happened at Apple, things have happened at Google, we're seeing the deprecation of cookies, and we're seeing the introduction of AT&T. How the hell do you trade across this mess of an ecosystem? Today we have Georgie from MiQ, and he said Media IQ, sorry Georgie. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
And Georgie's here to talk about how MiQ is working with clients to trade across this new fragmented ecosystem and how they're building trading expertise and applying new technologies to do this for clients. So Georgie, tell the audience what you do at MiQ.
Yeah, so I'm a product lead for identity at MiQ's, working on our global product team. MiQ, for anyone who doesn't know, we're a programmatic partner working with marketers and agencies to deliver custom solutions in the programmatic space.
Thank you, Georgie. So let's talk about the problem, right? We are in the privacy first era. Let's admit it, today we're in that era now. Apple obviously dropped the ATT bomb last week, and Google have been rolling out their sort of post-cookie options, and they're in sort of preparation for deprecation of cookies on Chrome in 2022. So let's talk about this problem. This is a huge problem for your clients, right? We're looking at a world where there is no post-view. Well, it might not be a post-view metric. It's going to be harder to measure, harder to target. And we are talking about a complete fragmentation of the ecosystem. Let's just talk about that problem briefly before we go into how you're working across that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are we're seeing a world in which browsers are starting to squeeze the availability of cookies. They have been for a while now. Safari first starting to do this back in 2017. And then Chrome obviously following suit in 2020 to finally commit to deprecating third-party cookies. But really, this has been it's been a long time coming. It's not new news to us, and we've been preparing for it for a while. There's been high-profile regulation from GDPR to CCPA. Consumer opinion on privacy and at the use of their data by big tech companies and ad tech has never been lower. This has been a long time coming, as I say. And the problems that come alongside this is that our industry relies on cookies for segmentation,
Overreliance,
for targeting and activation, and for measurement and attribution. One thing I would say when you talk about over-reliance, I'm just going to start up here.
Yeah.
If we think about the web as a whole, in this nice circle, 25% of the web, right? Users are accessing with the web through browsers which have no which block third-party cookies today. Another 25%, that's gone because users are using ad blocker. So even today, when we talk about 50%. The web display that relies on cookies, it's just 50% really that we're talking about, and we rely on that panel to then extrapolate out and measure attribute campaigns and target users. So display itself is when we think about the future of display, and when we ask the question of is display an addressable channel, well, even today 50% of it is not addressable, but we're happy with that as an industry, and we're able to work with that and extrapolate out learnings from that 50% that is addressable or identifiable.
Yeah. So even though that was the problem, it's got considerably worse, right? We are talking about, let's just talk about Europe, for instance, right? Say the Chrome browser has 60% market share, right? And the Apple browser has 30%, and Mozilla et al. Have 10%.
Yeah.
So you're talking about a lot of fragmentation there. And within those ecosystems, you have Chrome, who are going to deprecate cookies. You have ITP and Safari, who said you can't use third-party cookies on our browser. And Mozilla, who basically have taken a fairly aggressive privacy-first solution. So let's just talk about that instance of each of those pieces, right? Because obviously there's other things as well, like authentication and anonymous. Maybe talk about those, because that's a huge problem, right? Because we used to measure and target across using one cookie, the double-click cookie, effectively the Google cookie, to measure and target campaigns, right, in display. And that's how DO was sort of that was the basis of DO in our space. But this new fragmentation is a headache, right? How does a company like MiQ kind of approach that problem?
So we take a step up from the browsers when we think about the fragmentation. So I want to start off by thinking about the core subset of the web, which is going to be authenticated. So when we move beyond cookies, we're going to have this subset of the web, which is authenticated, the users are verified, logged in, they provided some kind of PII data point which is hashed, encrypted, and an ID is created. So you have that subset, and at a best guess, that's going to be 20 to 30% of the web which is authenticated. So then there's the wider circle around the edge of that is the anonymous web. So that's where there are no user ID level signals today. So already you've got this fragmentation between the authenticated web, the anonymous web, and we need to treat those two areas separately. I'm going to add on an additional layer of fragmentation. So we've got the open web and the closed web. So the open web is web kind of by and for its users, freely available, publicly available, synonymous with kind of independent ad tech publishers and providers today. Closed web, of course, being proprietary, walled off, gated ecosystems, synonymous with big tech. So again, you've got these additional divisions in how we think about identity and addressability and measurement. If we follow this on then, so we've got authenticated identity within the closed web. So you've got the walled garden identity. So this is a really strong form of identity.
Yeah.
I don't want to big up big tech too much.
No,
but it's
let's
a
not
really
big them up at all.
powerful combination of data and of owned and operated inventory. That's a really that it's powerful. It works. It's not a bad place for advertisers to be. But we think the key is to be across this whole kind of ecosystem. So on the flip side of authenticated, you've got the alternative industry identifiers. So this is like your IDLs, your UIDs, which offer this counterbalance to the identity, the really powerful identity of the walled garden, but across the open web. If we think then outside of authenticated in the anonymous section, we've got the browser solutions. So these are the API-based cohort methodology solutions for identity for things like targeting, retargeting, and measurement. Technically applicable across the whole of the web, but I've put them under closed web because it's kind of being
because it's
pushed
platform based,
by big tech, And then finally, this whole other section, which we're calling advanced contextual, which is where, again, you've got no user ID level signals, but you're able to build out a really strong picture of a user based on alternative signals that aren't user level. So, to summarize, you've got this fragmentation.
This is more fragmentation than I thought. Like, so you've got your authenticated, you've got your anonymous, you got your open web, and there's your closed web.
And even within these, right?
Of course, it's got mini walled gardens. You got like Pinterest and Snap and Ozone, whoever else is kind of working in that space.
You've got Chrome solutions here, you've got Safari solutions here as well. They've each got a solution for measurement based on APIs.
Georgie, if I was a marketer now, I'd be breaking down and crying. Like, so how do you make sense of this madness for your clients? Like, so if someone comes to you going, how do I target this? So what's your approach? Because like obviously you've built a reputation and being able to trade in the programmatic era, right? So this is the next step level, right, of complication to this. So talk about how your process of walking through this.
So it's really about what we've always done, which is about maximizing the data that a client has for planning, targeting, and measurement. So what we've always done at MiQ is be able to work with a set of first-party data to combine that with bidder or other third-party data and custom KPIs for the client.
Right.
The next stage then is feature extraction. So here we're talking about a model that extracts performing features rather than extracting performing users from enriching that first-party data with our additional data sources, right? So none of this at this point is user level. We're then building segments of these features. Again, features, not users. That could be keyword, domain, geo, creative size, list goes on.
Right.
So it's segments of these micro contexts, so combinations of these features that we then feed into the campaign, bid allocation into the campaign, and feed performance data back into this model. So that, in summary, is how we've always worked. And I think when our CEO did one of these 8 years ago, he drew something very similar.
Yes, he did. But he didn't imagine this lunacy occurring like so.
So we've spent 10 years perfecting this model, and the fundamentals of this part don't change. What changes is your inputs here and here. So if we're working with a client who's got a ton of first-party data, if they're, say, in the e-commerce sector, we can onboard that data via these alternative IDs. We can then enrich that data, not using bidder or third-party data, but using SSP or DSP data tied to new identity, so these new alternative IDs. Layer on second and third-party data, again, connected to these new IDs. And then the rest of this process stays very similar. So you're extracting features and pushing those features to activate on.
But your process hasn't changed, right?
Yeah.
But the end product probably has, right? So what you're sort of optimizing towards, right, previously was you had this, this universal measurement piece, which was the cookie, and now we're in a situation where that's going away, particularly for Safari and Mozilla, and will be gone for Chrome. So talk about how that affects how you work, right, with this process and working towards something completely different. How do you mitigate for that? Because obviously DR display is very dependent on post view window metric that helps to sort of allocate the end goal with a particular user, which was based on a cookie. So how do you work in that new environment? Like, are the clients changing the way they think about it, or do you find that you're educating them about how display will work? And that's a very difficult question, obviously, because I'm asking you to solve this display problem.
Big question. So we get asked this a lot by clients. I'm not going to pretend that we have all the answers to this, but we do think the answer is that it's going to be led. So if we think back to this ecosystem, it's going to be a combination of anonymous signals used to model out conversions, and layer on top of those authenticated, really precise signals to be able to build up kind of precise insights and extrapolate out across the rest of the campaign. So I can't tell you that it's like any one solution today, but I can say it's going to be a combination of anonymous and authenticated data and combining those for view and measurement.
And do you think, because we were chatting just previously, do you think that the measurement piece will change in the sense that we will move more back to vendors like Nielsen and all? They'll become part of the measurement mix, whereas they've been kind of predominantly stuck in TV. That will become more of a digital sort of thing, that those panel-based measurements will become part of the overall holistic sort of a measurement piece.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a return to the panel happening, and I think those providers that can offer panel-based authenticated measurement and offer it independent of, say, your Googles or Safari solutions, those will become even more powerful as they're these authenticated data sets, and you can then use them to extrapolate out insights across the rest of the campaign.
Is that something you're looking at MiQ already?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're testing out, we're working with Nielsen to get access to their authenticated data. It's not yet available, but we're also testing out model conversions and how we can apply them to our campaigns so we're prepared for the cookieless future.
And do you think that the industry has really got their head around how difficult it's going to become? Or do you still think that there is an over-reliance, and it's probably not, an over-reliance on Google, basically? You know what I mean? The ostrich bias, effectively, head in the sand, and Google will solve our problems.
I think there is a realization that this is going to be a step change. So the metrics are going to need to change. The benchmarks we work to are going to need to change, and we're getting questions from the advertisers and the agencies we work with around that. I think the issue is that we're all kind of waiting on Google announcements or on other industry announcements to be able to kind of advise our clients and work with our clients on setting those benchmarks and those new metrics, which this technology is like not yet in place yet. So it's going to take some time.
But if you were to kind of push this forward logically, you could argue this is going to happen because obviously MiQ is involved in many channels. You do TV, CTV, you work in digital out of home, you work in various channels. So effectively this is kind of like moving more towards that omni-channel piece anyway. This is the kind of thing you'd have to build to do everything. You know what I mean? Campaigns are not just going to be display only, they're going to be minute. And is that something you guys have been thinking about as well?
So we always, some of our clients use econometric modelling techniques, so can measure across omni-channel. I think that is going to be, it becomes more relevant in a cookieless world where we don't have cookies to measure display on a kind of one-to-one basis. That's only ever going to be one part of the measurement, a measurement plan for a brand though. So not all of our clients rely on that. It just depends on the brand, and we work with lots of different ones who have different kind of demands of us. Yeah.
So how do you think things are going to roll out in the next 6 to 12 months? Do you think clients will get the grips of this fairly quickly, and that they will change the way that they actually, they run their campaigns?
Yeah, I think we're getting a lot of questions about this now. We're getting a lot of clients who are interested in testing, so we're testing out these alternative IDs. We're testing,
and that's your UDIDs and ID5s of the world and all the rest of it. So
IDLs, UID2, that sort of thing. We're testing out the browser solutions as much as possible today. Yes, and lots of interesting R&D going on in that space as well.
Can you talk about the R&D stuff you're working on, or overview?
So we've always had kind of contextual capabilities at MiQ. I think the really interesting piece here is applying that contextual data to this workflow.
What's your overall process, basically?
Yeah, so if we think about a client who doesn't maybe have a ton of first-party data or isn't able to pass that to us for whatever reason, taking inputs from the contextual space rather than from the authenticated identity space. So it might be a set of domains that are relevant to a client, or a set of like micro geos that are relevant to a client. We can then enrich those and again model out predictive like domains or geos that we think are going to perform for
which have trading process and optimized towards the
like we're testing this and we've seen like 2x ROAS from geo-based enrichment and
that's all privacy first segments.
Completely cookieless.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right, Georgie, that was great. Thank you for that insight into the product team at MiQ, and it's good that some of the companies are thinking about this stuff. And look, this is a mess, so I'm sure there's going to be more of these whiteboard sessions in the next 6 to 12 months as we try to figure out what's going on in the privacy first era. So, Georgie, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time on Trader Talk TV. Thank you.